Well, this matter regarding shame, it's a little difficult for me to explain it because my parents could not speak English and couldn't understand Japanese that well either, and I could not speak Japanese, but I did know that they kept pounding it into us ever since we were little kids, never to do anything shameful, and especially if it would bring shame to the family. And they just kept pounding that into us. It was kind of a strange thing about them. I don't know whether that was true with other Japanese American families or not, but in our case, our mother and father, we had 5 sons and 5 daughters, so they had plenty of chance to preach to us what their philosophy was in Japan. And of course, it was very important. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, my father considered that as a shameful act. They killed all those American sailors were killed in Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese pulled a sneak attack, and that was what was considered shameful. And of course, that carried over to my brother Fred and me. We felt ashamed of what Japan had done at Pearl Harbor, and that's one reason we volunteered to get into the service immediately. And it was with a suggestion and support of our father to enlist.
How old were you?
What's age? Oh, age. Oh, I'm not sure now. I guess I must have been 24 or 25. Of course, those ideals that the parents pounded into us when we were kids have stayed with me for all these years. Even now, I'm 96 years old. I can remember how they preached to us about shame. So it's been very good. Of all the things that they contributed into our young lives, this matter regarding shame, I think, was very important, especially when the war broke out, and we wanted to sort of I can't think of the right words right now, but to make up for the fact of what the Japanese did at Pearl Harbor. And I couldn't do more than to risk my own life to try to right the wrongs of the war. Oh, I told you about the bombing of Pearl Harbor and how my dad and that was the thing that they taught us about shame and not to commit anything in the family to bring shame. I think that pretty well covers that one. It's a good thing you had these written out. It's a very good idea. I was overseas in England at the first time I read an article in a magazine that there'd been and Earl Warren, who was Attorney General for the state of California, was running for governor at that time. And he made the ugly statement that he didn't want Japanese Americans to come back to California ever after they were interned. And that was one of the things that challenged me even more. I was so irritated when I read such an ugly statement. The War Department was trying to set up this fledgling infantry regiment of the 442nd of all Japanese Americans. It was a segregated infantry unit. And so the War Department sent me to 3 internment camps to encourage the young men there to volunteer or be drafted into this fledgling 442nd Regiment. And that was one hell of an experience. The first time I didn't really know what was coming up, but my order just from the War Department said for me to report at Hart Mountain, Wyoming. And so here I come to the Hart Mountain gate, and the guards there were carrying rifles with bayonets, and they're wearing the same uniform I'm wearing, and inside were 10, 15,000 Japanese Americans, Japanese and Japanese Americans. So it was really a mixed feeling that I had about it. Hart Mountain had the most dissident group of young men being drafted. They were opposed. They called them the no-no boys or whatever, and some of them were even sent to trial in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and were imprisoned at Fort Leavenworth for refusing to be drafted. So they had that group. The most active group was right there at Hart Mountain. And I remember one thing, that the Caucasian director of the Hart Mountain camp asked me to speak to that group, dissident group, and he said, told me that they were putting on extra guards because they were concerned that they were going to try to beat me up. And nothing happened, but they hissed and booed me. And I remember one particular statement that I said, "If you think Japan's going to win this war, you're crazy." And they hissed and booed me. Let's see. Well, we covered the resistance from the internees. Incidentally, the leader of that resistance at Hart Mountain, they call me different names, very unprintable names. And the leader of that Hart Mountain called me a bullshitter. That's okay. I can take it. I think we covered the rest of that pretty well. Oh, that Denver taxi agent, that is something. I was wearing my full uniform, and I tried to share a taxi with a Caucasian. He slammed the door in my face and said, "I won't ride with no lousy Jap." That was when I pretty much decided I hadn't proved myself. I was wearing my ribbons from what I'd earned in England and in the European War, and I decided, well, I'm going to get into B-29s and go to the Pacific just to prove myself. I had a terrible time getting into B-29s. I was assigned to a B-29 crew, and I got word, shocking news, that War Department regulations prohibited Japanese Americans to fly in B-29. And my pilot, Jim Jenkins, appealed to Congressman Carl Curtis immediately. He wired War Department and whatever, but nothing happened. For 3 months, it just looked absolutely hopeless. And then I got word that 3 prominent Californians sent a telegraph to Secretary of War Stimson, and he granted me exception to War Department policy. That was probably the only GI in the World War II to be granted exception to War Department policy. And I was, an amazing thing was when we boarded our brand new airplane at Kearney Air Base, federal agents tried to remove me from my crew, and I had to show them Stimson's letter. I had to dig the letter up from my barracks bag, which I had a hard time finding. And I have that one thing I wanted to, I'm sure it's one of the most favorite documents of the war, and I have it framed. The letter, the original letter from Secretary of War Stimson is framed with my memorabilia at Smithsonian, and you will see that when you get there. And then I have this as an extra copy too. I'll also give it to you. I think one of the interesting things I've been, when I finally got to the Pacific, about bombing the Japanese cities. Of course, I never forget the biggest bombing mission in B-29s when we bombed Tokyo at night with 10-ton load of incendiary fire bombs. There's some 200 B-29s hit Tokyo on the one single raid, and those incendiary bombs are horrible because they can't put them out by putting water on them. Sand is the only way you can exterminate, get rid of the incendiary fire bombs. And I read two news stories. One claimed there was 80,000 Japanese were killed. The other news report said there was 100,000 killed. So that was the biggest bombing mission of the war. And I remember after we dropped our bombs, I was in the tail turret, so we were leaving the target. For a whole hour after we left the target, must have been over 200 miles, the sky was blood red, just unbelievable. And I did have qualms about all the women and children that were trapped in that inferno. Many lost their lives. The other interesting thing about the B-29s, our B-29 was packed back to back to the Enola Gay that had the atomic bombs. And my pilot, Jim Jenkins, tried to find out from the pilot what they were up to, and they would never tell even him. He said the only thing they told him was that they had an island buster, and that's what, when they dropped the atomic bomb, the war ended.